Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
and congratulations
you so much
on your 1-year show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so welcome to Café con Cas. I apologize. I have some pee and picture in your face right now. But let's just move this over. Again, we're live, so yeah, I'll take it on this side. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What made you come all the way out here to Cambridge? What brought you here?
You know, there's a lot going on in Holyoke right now.
Yep.
And it's very thick in there, at least for me. So I figured coming here, you know, having the opportunity that you invited me, I figured it would be a good time to kind of get away and kind of really kind of organize my thoughts and really kind of reflect on everything that's going on. So I just
Definitely.
last minute, I'm just gonna go and be on the show.
I'm so excited. Yeah, I got the call around 4:00 that David is actually going to be here live in the studio, and I was really excited. And I just want to give you an opportunity to really just convey to the audience who you are, because it's easy to Google Holyoke. I Googled it. It's a wonderful small town, also, you know, where volleyball was invented and where there are a lot of Puerto Ricans. But also kind of give you an opportunity to kind of take the stage a little bit, maybe use your Facebook page if you want to, but tell the crowd who you are, and also what got you into art, and how did this project start?
Yeah, so my name is David Flores. I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, a predominantly Mexican community. This community had very minimal to no visual kinds of representations of Mexicanness anywhere. And so for me, you know, there was always a struggle. I never felt respected. I never felt self-empowered. And this is something, you know, reflecting on, you know, I never was able to kind of see myself in a way that I could make change, you know, just because I wasn't represented in my own space. Mm. And so I moved to Holyoke about 4 years ago. And I specifically chose to live there just because it was the only space that kind of reminded me of where I came from in Chicago, which is very, you know, urban, a lot of Latinos, and so I felt most comfortable there. I've always been into art. It's just something that's just always been a part of me. And so when I moved to Holyoke and I noticed, you know, and I'll preempt this by saying, you know, in Chicago there are spaces and communities like Pilsen, Little Village, Humboldt Park, predominantly Mexican and Puerto Rican spaces that there's no question as soon as you walk in those spaces that they are Mexican and Puerto Rican spaces. It just bleeds it. It's everywhere on the walls, murals, sculptures, everything. And so when I got to Holyoke and I saw there was no kinds of visual representations of Puerto Ricanness anywhere. Holyoke has the largest concentration of Puerto Ricans outside of Puerto Rico, anywhere in the U.S. And so when I saw that, I was just like, what's going on here? You know what I mean?
I was so shocked.
Yeah.
I was like, are they, you know, and in fact, like, it's
Absolutely.
right next door. It's like, you know, it's like you're hungry, the door's open, but you don't know where the egg is, and it's
Yeah.
right next to you,
Right.
like that you could have eaten the whole time, but you're starving for it. It's hard. It was right there.
So when I got there, I was just like, okay. And I'm also going to school at Hampshire College, and
Okay.
my focus there is community-based design, and specifically Latino placemaking through art and design. And so I saw Holyoke, and I saw no art, I saw no Puerto Rican art, I saw no representations of Puerto Ricans. I'm like, you know, I want to change that, you know, and I had the space to do that. And so I worked with this initiative that kind of allowed me to create this public art. And so I created this mural.
Let's get it up in P&P
Yeah.
while you talk about this mural right now.
So I created this mural that
Okay.
represents for me the Puerto Rican diaspora in Holyoke. And you know, it's a license plate, you know, and people could just see it as a license plate, a very giant license plate. It's 8 foot by 16 feet.
Let's switch this up. There you go.
It's on the side of City Hall right now. But for me, this is more than just a license plate. You know, this represents an entire community. This gives a voice to a community that for so long has been repressed and kind of almost erased. And so unfortunately, there's been a lot of drama behind this mural and kind of the things that I've kind of been striving for. So those are the things I'm working through right now.
So let me preface a little bit for the audience too. So by drama, there has been there's been political drama. There's been drama with the placement of the mural, and there's also been drama on a recent public art ban that happened in very close proximity to the creation of the mural, in addition to some tension. This is a mural that is really beautiful. It's very well done, but it's also in a space where we were talking a little bit before the show, in a space where there's lots of shamrocks in the community. So it's been a little bit jarring for certain people, which to me, honoring healing arts and diversity is a little bit strange, but is really happening in Holyoke. And why do you think that's happening in Holyoke? Can you explain a little bit about what Holyoke is like? Is there any other Puerto Rican part of Holyoke, or is this the only object that's presenting the large population of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, absolutely. So Holyoke, the majority of Holyoke residents, for the most part, are Puerto Rican, and in the spaces that they reside in, which is known as like the downtown area, it's the Flats, South Holyoke. Again, there's no visual markers. Instead, you have these giant green shamrocks that cover the public streets to kind of, show that you have this group of people that still have control over this larger group of people, and so kind of reproducing this kind of notions of colonialism. And my intention through this mural was to kind of give this community a voice, give Puerto Ricans a voice, give them something to feel self-empowered. These are the things that I never had growing up, and so it's always been my goal through Latino placemaking to kind of give back to the community the things that I never had growing up. And so...
Were you surprised? So, your intentions, I'm going to switch a little bit, I'm going to switch the shower now. Your intentions are really pure. Your intentions are really simple. Like, this is something that you wanted a visual marker. And I read from our conversation, just talking and chatting on Facebook, you're so personable and you're such an artist. And were you shocked that all of a sudden you just became this central figure? Your name's on the internet. I see... again, if you guys go and you Google this story in your own home, which we do often, you'll see that there's a lot of controversy. Has that shocked you, being it? Because your intention is just to create art.
Absolutely. That was never my intention. This made national headlines. And it varying kinds of topics like censorship of identity, racism, this public art ban, and these are the things that have come out of a license plate, that represents half of the community, and there really aren't that many other visual representations of Puerto Ricanness. What exists is just kind of hidden. This in the same way that kind of they treat the community already, they kind of put them to the side. Yeah. And so for me, it was really important to create something that was very, in a high traffic area, very visible, in a very prominent place, to kind of show, Puerto Ricans exist here. Puerto Ricans can claim a space here. And so for me, it's really important to claim these parts of Holyoke where Puerto Ricans exist as a Puerto Rican space, because that's what they are in every other, in every other way. And so people try to erase that by putting shamrocks and like all these kinds of, these European kinds of ethnic markers all over the place. And so that's not right, and it's wrong. It's, for me, that I see that as a social injustice, and so the conversation has kind of come to that right now, kind of gone from this kind of conversation of censoring of identity, which it still is, but now now there's a platform to kind of actually create some change. Yeah. And so for me, that's what I'm most excited about. I mean, again, this was never my intention. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to create... He sounds like a hero in the making. This is a good American story. I wanted to create something for the community. Yeah. And that's it, to be quite honest. And create a lot of things. But there are people who didn't agree with that and who saw it as too Puerto Rican, who saw it as like, wait, you can't claim this space because it's our space. And I'm like... This is a very hegemonic...
The representation is saying, and as we're saying, in terms of spaces, I mean, just imagine, for those of you watching, you're watching Holyoke, you're imagine going through a town, There's certain towns in Massachusetts I kind of have to pinch myself. This also happens in other parts of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm like, oh my gosh, am I in like colonial Gettysburg? Is this a historical reenactment? Because Massachusetts really values history. And I really value history. Coming to this country and just being one generation here, my family really values history and really wants to be a part of a community because democracy is pretty darn awesome. So this is a really great example of how you have these people, but you have, it's like, you know, you have this giant thriving community. They're totally seen, but they're not seen. It becomes this really, an issue. I really liked your term. And when I said visual representation, I learned this from David today in preparing this interview and talking to him. That's a really profound statement. I really appreciate that because you're giving me the tool and the language to be like, wait a second, visual representations in my life may be my style of dress, or it may be like, I have two banderas in my apartment. I have one in my room, and I have another that's a painting in the living room. So that's a really powerful tool, you know, this visual representation. So in this representation, also being you're addressed in the media as one person. Do you have people supporting you right now? And also, if so or if not, like, what kind of support do you need to continue this movement and continue helping people?
Yeah, absolutely. And so really quick, one of the things that people forget too is that Puerto Ricans are a part of this American history.
Yes.
Puerto Ricans are a part of Holyoke, are part of Holyoke history, and so they want to erase that. You know, they don't want to represent that. But luckily, I have a lot of people in Holyoke, a lot of community members, a lot of community. I'll just leave it at that. Community members who are on my side, you know, who do get it and who do want change. You know, they've lived in their long-standing residents of Holyoke, and so they've gone through this for decades, and so for them, they see this as like, when they saw that mural, many people said, like, finally, it's about time.
Pointing to the computer.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just telling you because this is so incredible. We're live. We had the glitch, but you know, as David's talking, there's the mural supporting him through this interview as well.
So people see the mural and things that they've told me is like, you know, it's about time, finally, you know, because it's the first time that they feel like they've been represented visually in the community, you know, that where they claim a space, like I said, in every other way. And so there are many people who are supportive, very, very supportive, and who I know will be there if any kind of a demonstration needs to happen.
Right.
And also when I was going through the time when my mural needed a home, so many people offered a space, you know, their public and private spaces. They wanted it in their living rooms, you know, they wanted it in front of their restaurants, you know, and they wanted it, people felt really connected to this piece. And that was my goal, you know what I mean? And so luckily that happened. Unfortunately, there's the other half who don't see it that way. Yeah. And so most of that half is who are in positions of power, unfortunately, in the community, and unfortunately most of them are Latino elected officials who have been kind of staying mute on the situation, prefer not to see this as a issue of race, because it makes them uncomfortable. You know, it's not something that's neutral, it's not something that might get them votes, you know, and so they're picking their battles, unfortunately, but for me, there's a bigger battle that needs to be fought, and that's for social justice, for spatial justice, and that's who needs to be at the forefront with me. You know, luckily for me, it's always been really important to have the actual community members who this is affecting be at the forefront of deciding what goes on these walls. You know, like what I should even do, and more importantly, like how I can help them do it. You know, do it themselves. That's more important for me. But it's also really helpful to have, you know, people who are in positions of power, especially if they're already in Holyoke and if they're Latino, you know, like they have a much bigger voice than I do. They have a bigger platform, and unfortunately they're choosing to not use it right now. And so that's been my biggest struggle. You know, it feels like I'm like this one person army, you know, and an uphill battle, and it sucks, you know, and so I need help from anyone. I've been tweeting, you know, like tagging ACLU, NPR, you know, Fox, CNN, like all these people. I just need help. Like it feels like I'm doing this by myself, you know. And as much as the community has been there to support me, like el pueblo unido jamás será vencido, you know, so the more people we have doing this, the louder that we are, the greater of a change we can create. And so I need help.
Yeah, I definitely, I just, in the spirit of help, I will also mention, and I'm just like juggling between these two shots right now, but the picture that we're using here today is from LaRespuestaMedia.com. La Respuesta Media, and you also said the Latino Rebels have done a really great job.
Shout out to La Respuesta Latino Rebels in Puerto Rico, en serio.
Yes, Puerto Rico, en serio, and además, you also have a live, there's also, so the MassLive.com as well also had a little
Trigger
bit.
Radio also has had me, and Fox News Latino has covered it. Thank you for that. That's been so helpful.
Thank you to everybody who's doing that. It's really hard to hear that you know, it's. Do you think it's a solo? Do you think you're solo? Is there any particular reason that it's been a solo act for you, or is it just been that you created the mural? You got to take the brunt.
You know, people have been repressed in Holyoke, not people, Puerto Ricans, Latinos have been repressed in Holyoke for so long, decades, that they've a lot of them have kind of become brainwashed, you know, and thinking that it's fine to be repressed, you know, we don't need to like visual markers, you know, we don't need these things. And for me, it's so, coming from a space like Chicago where I've experienced the transformation within myself, being in spaces that represent me, you know, represent Latinos, and it makes me feel empowered. It makes me feel like I can actually create change and I can respect myself, you know, because before I was never able to do that. And so these things like have such a transformative kind of effect, a very therapeutic effect. And so it's for me, it's crucial to like have every space kind of defined and claimed to some sort of ethnic kind of community, and so that's just what I'm trying to do.
What has been growing up here? Have you always had like, this is a tough question to ask, and I'm gonna have to ask in the spirit of I'm gonna have to have a little bit of Oprah moment and ask them like the confessional journalistic experience, right? Have you always grown up Puerto Rican here in America, or has it been complicated? So
I'm actually not Puerto Rican. So I grew up in Chicago. I'm Mexican. My parents are from Mexico. I identify as Mexican, not Mexican American. I know that'll piss a lot of people off. But it's kind of hard to feel accepted into this kind of American ideal. You know, growing up as a person of color, specifically Mexican, specifically Puerto Rican. So growing, like, I basically spent half of my life in Mexico. So I that's another reason I consider myself, you know, Mexican too, or label myself Mexican, I should say. But for me, like we were talking about earlier, in Humboldt Park in Chicago, this traditionally Puerto Rican space. You know, there are more Mexicans who live in that community.
That's the connection. I thought the connection was just our Mexicans, Puerto Rican, but literally we have representation right here. Like, there's the little representation. Absolutely. They manifested.
And so, you know, like, they work in such close kind of solidarity, you know, and there's a chant that Puerto Ricans and Mexicans say to get at any kind of a rally or demonstration is, Boricua y Mexicano luchando mano a mano. And we in Chicago kind of hold that really true. We're always there to back each other up. What's more important is, like, especially the Latino elected officials in Chicago, the community works with them hand in hand. Like, we're right next to each other. They're at the forefront, making sure that things happen.
The last time I heard about this representation, this is so interesting to me because it was truly... the history, Puerto Rican history also includes many Puerto Ricans who helped in the civil rights movement, many Jamaicans also who helped in the civil rights movement. Always being, and I'm having this little teary-eyed moment, like, okay, I'm live on air and I call the Mexican a Puerto Rican, but the fact that we're together, those lines are not distinct. That to me is just such an incredible accomplishment because, you know, it's people helping each other in movements, and it's also looking at the greater movement of visual representation and saying, here's a community that needs help, but what an interesting story when that help gets politicized and people haven't awakened. How can they awaken?